let's get started. So, as usual, get together on a Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, wherever you might be at this time, or whatever time it might be, wherever you are, to get together and discuss the Lord Buddha's teaching, that is the Dhamma that he has given us, with the intention, the deliberate intention of coming to an understanding that might help us to attain Nibbana. That is always our aim and our goal with these programs, and these programs shall continue for as long as you have that interest. And as I always say, if you have any questions that are related to that, then please drop those questions. Keep them coming, either on YouTube, on our Skype group, or on the web radio when we connect. So today we will, as usual, record the sermon, and I will make a point to upload the sermon and post a link to our Skype group as soon as we have terminated the live stream, so that I'm conscious that there are listeners for whom this time is not entirely convenient. But that's not, that shouldn't be a problem. Sometimes we have the good fortune to actually listen to the Dhamma while sitting in front of, face to face with a Kalyana Mitra, a noble friend. Sometimes that's not always possible. So for example, we have today we don't have the fortune to sit in front of the Lord Buddha and receive his message directly from him. But we must always remind ourselves that Lord Buddha's teaching. He's always said there's no great value in looking at him, him in his physical form. He's always said, Yo Dhammam Passati So Mam Passati. To see the Dhamma is to see me. If you see the Dhamma, if you comprehend the Dhamma, if you understand the Dhamma, that is his teaching, then you understand him, you understand his qualities through his teaching. And that is true of, we can take day-to-day examples, our own experiences to validate that. Think of your favorite teacher at school. Your respect for your teacher, how much you adore your teacher, how much you like your teacher, very much depends on how much you can understand what he or she teaches, his style or her style of teaching, the attributes that they possess and portray, and the way that they conduct themselves in front of you. So, but mainly, if your teacher is not skillful in teaching, if whatever they teach is not to your satisfaction, if you can't understand what is being taught, then chances are to you they are just another teacher, they're just another person, perhaps. But when you really understand, when you grasp the essence of what is being taught, then along with that, the value of what is being taught, along with that, the value of the person that's giving you that message increases as well. So the point being, it doesn't matter whether you're sat in front of me or whoever is preaching. It really doesn't matter. As long as you receive this message through online, through the internet, radio, recorded sessions, or perhaps even read it in a book, as long as you receive the message and you put in every effort to try and understand it, comprehend it, and most importantly, as I always tell you, practice it, put it into practice, put it into your lives, and experience it for yourselves, then the understanding that you need to attain Nibbana is one that is perfectly achieved. So, as always, when we begin, we spare a moment to reflect on the fact that the Dhamma that we discuss is that which has been gifted to us by the Lord Buddha. It is because of his infinite compassion that we have the Dhamma that we have today to help us cross the ocean that is Sankara and attain Nibbana. So let us remind ourselves of that fact by paying our utmost respect to the Lord Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. And also, it's important that we are grateful for what we have, whether that's something material or, in this case, something that is supramundane, something that helps us more than in a material way. And what I mean here is the teaching that we have today, the teaching that we have received to help us attain Nibbana. We only have this because we have come past, in this birth and in previous births, situations, people, and beings, or sentient beings of all types, shapes, and forms, who have helped us come this far, who have helped us secure and achieve a human birth. Because without being born in one of the Sugati worlds, that is the blissful planes in English, either as a human, a Deva, or a Brahma, it is virtually impossible to understand the Dhamma. And it's impossible to at least have any amount of conviction, any amount of faith in you to at least initiate the path that you need to cross this bridge. So today we have that fortune, we have that opportunity, and therefore it's important that when we have this message, when we have the Lord Buddha's teaching, and we are at a point where we are discussing it, we, with open arms, invite those beings who have helped us on our way here, whether that is by offering us a glass of water or perhaps by showing us direction at whichever point in life, and invite them on this occasion to listen to the Lord Buddha's teaching so that they may understand it just as much as you and I, and listen to this Dhamma with the firm determination that this Dhamma, this sermon may help you and I and those beings who invite attain the Margapala, that is Sotapanna, Sakurdagami, Anagami, and Arihat, so that they may put an end to this endless rebirth cycle that brings us an endless amount of suffering. So please join me, and as I make that invitation, spare a moment to invite in your own minds Devas, Brahmas, as well as any beings, any relatives that you may have had in the past who may not be among us today. Invite them to come and listen to this Dhamma and understand it, have the fortune to understand it, so that they may use this teaching to help them put an end to this woeful state that we are in, which is being in existence in samsara. Samanta Chakravalesu Atra Gachantu Devata Saddhammam Munirajasansa Sunantu Sagga Mukkadam Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Bhatanta Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Bhatanta Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Bhatanta. Okay. I remain hopeful that you can still hear us on YouTube, and I'm going to make that assumption, and hopefully someone can confirm that. Just drop in a short message to confirm that. The reason I'm always doubtful is because where I am, that is in the arame, in the monastery, sometimes the internet connection is a bit patchy. So I've always got this doubt at the back of my mind, thinking, am I just talking to a laptop, and there's no one on the other end that's able to listen, that's able to hear me? That can be a little bit frustrating sometimes when I do realize that is the case. But if you are able to hear me, then please just drop a short message on the live chat on YouTube, and that'll help me. That'll help put me at ease. I'm at ease anyway, but if I know that you are not able to hear me, then at least I can do something about it and fix the problem, or at least try and fix the problem. Because ultimately, it's all cause and result, cause and effect. I can remember there was one day when I was actually sat in front of the laptop. Excellent, I have someone confirming that. The story I was saying was I was sat one day, I think it was 2 weeks back, when it was raining heavily, and there was also a power cut in the monastery. I'm sat in front of the laptop talking to the laptop, and unfortunately the laptop that I had, the battery was very bad, so it didn't hold any charge at all. I didn't realize that there had been a power cut. And so I'm just talking at a blank screen, not knowing that the power had gone, the laptop had been shut down, and I'm just talking away. So I'm hoping, and let's be hopeful that there's no repeat of that happen. Okay, so as a reminder, if you have any questions, then please post them. What I thought I would like to talk to you about today is something I've been thinking about this week, and that is if you've been to a funeral in Sri Lanka, or perhaps possibly in some other Buddhist countries, there is a certain verse that is very commonly displayed at a funeral, or perhaps in an obituary. That's for those young listeners among us, kids particularly. An obituary is where there's a notice that someone has passed away, someone has died. That could be on a paper, it could be on a poster somewhere on a street. So if you've seen an obituary, particularly in Sri Lanka, or perhaps also, as I said, in some other countries, there is a certain verse that is very commonly displayed. So it goes, Anicca vatha Sankara. So remind yourselves, perhaps you might have seen this in some places. It says, Anicca vatha Sankara. Now, this is actually a verse that it's at least one line from a 4-line verse that comes from the Mahaparinibbana Sutra, or the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. So Mahaparinibbana, because this is the sutta that describes the occasion of the passing away of the Lord Buddha into Parinibbana. And what happens is, on this occasion, there's the Sakra, one of the chief devas of the Chatur Maharaja, the 4 heavenly realms, descends onto that occasion, and he makes an utterance, and that utterance is Anicca vatha Sankara. The other 3 lines are Uppada Vaya Dhammino, Uppajjitva Nirujjanti, Tesang Bhupa Samosuko. Possibly come across this, probably heard this, and you've probably seen this, as I say, in some obituaries. It's one that is very commonly used, and sometimes perhaps the meaning that is given is one that is very superficial. I think what we talk about a lot of the time even, in these sermons, whether that's the English ones or the Sinhala ones, is the fact that a lot of the Dhamma that we discuss, that we talk about, essentially what we're doing is giving the deeper, profound meaning to a lot of the Dhamma that exists out there already, but for which the deep, profound meaning has been lost. And it is the very superficial meaning that prevails. And so people just talk about that, and therefore the deep meaning that helps one to comprehend the doctrine, the philosophy that is embossed, engraved in that Dhamma is lost, and therefore an opportunity to understand the reality around us, and again, therefore, an opportunity to attain Nibbana, to become enlightened. So there is, as I say, in this verse, in this four-line verse, Anicca vatha Sankara, uppadavaya dhammino, uppajjitva nirujjanti, te sangupa samosako. There is meaning, believe it or not, that helps one to appreciate the true nature of what suffering is, the cause of suffering, the emancipation from that suffering, how do you relieve yourself from that suffering, and the path to the emancipation from suffering. You see, for one to be enlightened, for one to attain Nibbana, it's crucial, it is fundamental that these four noble truths are contained, are expressed in whatever verse, story, or any bit of Dhamma that we talk about, read about, listen to, etc., etc. Because without that, there is no way that you can get an understanding that helps you to attain Nibbana. Because essentially that is what the Lord Buddha gifted to all sentient beings, the Four Noble Truths. That is why in his first discourse ever, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, he talks about these Four Noble Truths. Dukkha Arya Satya, Dukkha Samudaya Arya Satya, Dukkha Nirodha Arya Satya, and Dukkha Nirodha Gamini Patipada Arya Satya. So again, in English, that's the first noble truth being the suffering, but as I've expressed before, this is not just any old suffering. This is the noble truth of suffering. Perhaps I will give you a refresher for anyone that is unable to remember what the difference is between suffering and the suffering that the Lord Buddha gave, or the Lord Buddha taught us about. Then the cause for that suffering, the emancipation or the liberation from that suffering. How do you remove yourself from that suffering? At least, what is the medicine for that? And what is the path? So you need a path. You need to know how to get somewhere. So you need to understand where we are right now. What's wrong with it? How did we get here? What's keeping us here? Where do we need to get to? And then finally, how do we get there? The Four Noble Truths. So these Four Noble Truths are contained within this verse, in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Well, the actual Four Noble Truths is hidden. That meaning is in the words, but you need to make an effort to actually see it. And therefore, once you have that understanding, hopefully, once you've listened to this sermon and you understand it, next time you see one of these obituaries, or go to a funeral and you see Anicca vatha Sankara written next to, there could be some kind of a poster or some kind of a banner, then the deeper meaning will spring to mind. And perhaps if you're with somebody, if you're accompanying somebody, or somebody's accompanying you to the funeral, then you can explain to them as well. Anicca vatha Sankara is not just any old phrase. There's a much deeper meaning to this. So before we get there then, what's the difference between dukkha and dukkha arya satya? It would be unreasonable for us to imagine that before the Lord Buddha came into this world, people didn't understand. If we thought, or if we said that people didn't understand what suffering was before the Lord Buddha came into this world, I don't think that would be fair. What do you think? Do you think before the Lord Buddha came into this world, people didn't die, people didn't pass away, people didn't get hurt, people didn't fight with each other, steal from each other, lie to each other, hurt each other's feelings, backstabbing, all of these things, murder, killing for gain and all things like that? Do you really think those things didn't happen before the Lord Buddha's time? Clearly they did. And in fact, it is told that we sometimes tend to think that today's society is very complex. But actually, I think the reality is in the time of the Lord Buddha, the society was much more complex than it is today. Because there were 62 different philosophies. And all of these were based in wrong view. Dehatak mithya drishti. You might have heard this phrase in perhaps some of the Sinhala Deshana that we have. 62 different wrong views. Most of them based in the concept that there is an Atma or a soul, and the other half based on the concept or the doctrine that there is no self or no soul. Attain, there is or there isn't. When in fact the Lord Buddha comes along and teaches us, do not get into either of these extremities. I do not preach of existence as a soul. I don't believe in, or I don't teach about a soul, or I don't teach about a non-soul or a non-self. My philosophy is that of cause and effect, cause and result. So what is the difference between dukkha satya and dukkha arya satya? The meaning of dukkha arya satya is in the word arya, because really that's the main difference. So dukkha satya, satya being truth, dukkha meaning suffering. So dukkha satya is plain simply the truth that is suffering. Dukkha arya satya, however, the word arya elevates that meaning to a noble truth. So whatever is special, whatever makes this a profound teaching is contained within this word arya. To understand what that really means, I will need to break up this word into how this word is formed, and for that I will need to use a little bit of Pali and perhaps a bit of Sinhala, and I hope you'll excuse me for that. In Sinhala, Riya is a vehicle. So a bus, for example, in Sinhala is bus Riya, or car Riya, which is a car. So Riya is basically a vehicle. Now, we've got to ask ourselves the question then, what is the vehicle that we have been using or that we have been traveling in all this time? What is the vehicle that we have been traveling in all this time? Come to think of it, the vehicle that we have been traveling in all this time, not just this birth, so you might be thinking, oh, that's my car parked on my driveway or the garage. We're not talking about that vehicle. Actually, we're talking about the vehicle that you've been traveling in Sankara. Throughout Sankara, you've traveled, you've come a very long way. We've all come a very long way in this vehicle. This vehicle has taken us to sometimes, or very seldomly, very rarely to blissful planes, Sugati. These are this is the human realm, the Deva realm and the Brahma realm. But most of the time we've spent in the apayas, in the woeful planes, the nirayas, the preta worlds, the asura worlds, not having a good time. In fact, spending every moment that we were alive in deep pain and a lot of suffering. So it doesn't make sense to be traveling in this vehicle, because for all the time that we spend in the blissful planes, we spend at least 100,000 times that time, 1,000,000 times the time we spent in blissful planes in the apayas. So there's more to lose than there is to gain, and therefore it doesn't make any logical sense for us to continue life in samsara. I remind you at this moment in time an occasion when the Lord Buddha pointed at a rank of buffaloes, and he asks the bhikkhus there, "Bhikkhus, you see those buffaloes? Did you know that every buffalo there has been a Sakra Devya or a Sakra god, has been a Brahma, has enjoyed life as an emperor, as a human being, and every kind of existence that we take as being happy or in a blissful plane. And yet today they are in the Tirachana Yoni, which is the animal realm, the animal hell." So therefore he asks the question, well, what is the point then? What is the point of being able to enjoy life in a heavenly abode when all of that is lost and you have to go back into hell and spend an eternity in a hell and suffer endlessly? What's the point in doing that? Is it not better to find why you're still in samsara and then remove the reasons, eradicate the reasons you're in samsara, and therefore put a permanent stop to this journey in samsara? Put a permanent stop to this vehicle that's taken us in samsara. So what is this vehicle then? This vehicle is avidya and tanha, or delusion, ignorance even, and attachment. Avidya and tanha has been our vehicle in samsara. We've taken shape as a human, we've taken shape as a deva, as a brahma, but as I said before, most of our time as a preta, as an animal, or in one of the nirayas, and suffered plenty. So if you're like me, you have no intention of going back there again, ever. So the noble truth that the Lord Buddha teaches us is dukkha arya satya. So riya being vehicle, and in Sinhala, to give the opposite meaning to a word, you normally put the letter A in front of it. So riya, you put the letter A in front of it, it becomes arya, and therefore you get the opposite. So if riya is a vehicle and you're traveling, the meaning that is conveyed is traveling in samsara, then by putting the letter A, you get the opposite of that, which means let's put an end to that journey. Let's stop that vehicle. Let's eradicate avidya and tanha. So really, the suffering that he's talking about is to do with our journey in samsara. It's not about the suffering that you feel on your body when someone comes and hits you, or the suffering that you experience when someone dies, someone yells at you, someone hurts your feelings. That's not the kind of suffering the Lord Buddha is talking about here. He's talking about a much more profound, a much more deep doctrine. This is the dukkha arya satya. So the same meaning is continued when he talks about dukkha samudaya arya satya. So again, he's not talking about, what is the cause for that suffering in terms of why did that person hit me, or, we're not talking about plain old mundane material pain here. We're talking about the pain and suffering that we have experienced as a result of going through samsara. And this pain and this suffering, you've got to see it through wisdom, not by experiencing it. Because if you're experiencing it, then unfortunately you're too late. Because quite frankly, who do you think suffers more? You, as a human being born in a human realm, or one of the beings in the woeful planes, a preta, or perhaps in a niraya, in the avitya, niraya, which is the worst hell that you can imagine. Who do you think suffers more? Well, quite plainly, it's without argue, it's going to be the being that's born in the avitya. So if the Lord Buddha did in fact talk about pain in the sense of suffering, who do you think is going to understand that kind of pain quicker, faster, and more fully? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be that sentient being born in the niraya, experiencing that pain every moment that being is alive? Well, clearly it's going to be the being that's born in the woeful planes. So from that itself, it's clear that he's not talking about pain that is to be suffered, that is to be experienced. He's talking about pain that is to be understood, comprehended through wisdom. Seeing pain and suffering before it happens. So, for example, when you cross the road, you look to your left, you look to your right, you look to your left, and never remember which way around you do it first. Is it right, left, right, or left, right, left? Doesn't matter, either way. The reason you do that is because you want to avoid suffering, you want to avoid an accident before it happens. Treating pain and suffering after the fact is not the Buddhist way. You don't need the Lord Buddha to teach you that, because that's what we've been doing all time along. When you're hungry, you eat. Why? Because you're treating pain and suffering. You don't need the Lord Buddha to come and teach you that. Eat when you're hungry. You don't need the Lord Buddha to teach you that. That was common sense. When you're suffering because you have some kind of a disease, a wound, or you got a stomach ache, you go to the doctor, you get some medicine. You don't need the Lord Buddha to teach you that. What the Lord Buddha teaches us is stop it before you have to experience that pain. Before you get to that point, see it through wisdom, and then put a stop to it before it happens, before the fact. So it's not after the fact, it's before the fact. So dukkha samudaya satya, therefore, is what is the cause for this suffering? And then he says, yo tassa eva tanhaya asesa viraga nirodha. He says tanha is the cause for suffering. Tatra tatra binandani sayyati dan kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. So it's kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha. He talks about three kinds of suffering, three kinds of tanha even, three kinds of attachment. That is the cause for suffering. So he then, when did we ever think to ourselves, before we got this teaching, that it was actually my attachment to things that brings me suffering? Oftentimes people think that, it's when someone comes and hits me, that's suffering, and therefore, or when someone takes something that belongs to me, that's suffering, and if you ask them what caused that, then they point their finger at the person that just stole from you. Or they point at a situation, they point at a person and say, there is the cause for my suffering. When did we ever point at ourselves? When did we ever point at ourselves and say to ourselves, it's not the reason or the cause for your suffering is not out there, it's actually within you. It's because you're attached to it that you suffer. We never worry, or we never worried about, we don't suffer about losing something that we don't have an attachment to. In fact, we let go of them quite simply, quite easily. Take, for example, your favorite chocolate. So you've got the chocolate in your hand, it's in a wrapper. Now you unwrap it and the wrapper goes in the bin. You couldn't care less if someone came and stole the wrapper. But what if someone stole the chocolate? You don't like that. Why is that? Because you're not attached to the wrapper. You're attached to the chocolate. That's why you're suffering. So you don't care two hoots if someone stole the wrapper, but you do care, and it causes you great hurt and pain if someone took the chocolate because you have an attachment to this chocolate. So so from that it should become obvious. I mean, that's just one example how it's attachment that causes suffering. Again, say you were in a relationship and that relationship was getting a bit sour and you wanted to end that relationship. One fine day, the other party or your partner comes and says, you know what, guess what? I think we should bring this to an end. There is no more joy in us living together. And in fact, sorry to say, but I found someone else. It's not you, it's me. That's how they always say, right? And now at that moment in time, you're thinking to yourself, I couldn't ask for a better result than this. Because you wanted that relation to end just as much as the other person. So you're no longer attached to that relationship. You're no longer attached to that person, and therefore their departure brings you no suffering. But what if they now say, actually, although I'm departing from you, we've earned money together, and some of the money that's in our joint bank account belongs to me. Now it's a different matter. Why? Because you're attached to that money. You've built hopes, you've got all these plans on how you're going to be spending that money. You were planning on buying yourself a Ferrari, and now the partner that's going to be breaking up is going to be taking half of that money. Now you're going to start objecting. Now you're going to want to bring in the lawyers. But all this time wasn't a problem. So hopefully that should make clear how it's not breaking up of things or departure of someone that brings you suffering. It's how much you're attached to that thing or how much you're attached to that person. That's why the Lord Buddha says, Yampi channa labati tampi dukkha. Yampi iccha. If there is something that you are attached to, iccha is your attachment to something, nalabati, not being able to receive it, tampi dukkha, that brings you suffering. So yampicha nalabati tampi dukkha. In fact, attaching or having to associate yourself with something that you don't like is just as painful. What if you have to, remember the time when you have to go to a new school and you walk in on the first day. I mean, I remember my first day at school. My very first day going into school, good heaven, that was a very unpleasant experience. I still remember to this day how I couldn't say goodbye to my parents. I just wanted to go back home. I just wanted to get back in the car, run back out, get back in the car and just drive back home with them. It was a very unpleasant experience. For whatever reason, I don't know. I mean, the other students were lovely. The teacher was lovely. But that first moment was not one I enjoyed. I still remember it to this day, 30 years later. Amazing how some memories we hold for our entire life. And so on that occasion, being in that place was not something I enjoyed. So just as much as saying goodbye to my parents on that day when they dropped me off at school was a painful experience, having to walk into that classroom, and in fact the teacher had to shut the door and lock it just so that I wouldn't, just so they could stop me from running out. You wouldn't believe I'm the same person today. But in any case, so the point being, just as much as having to associate yourself with something or having to dissociate yourself from something you like causes suffering and pain. Having to associate with something you don't like is just as painful. But again, what's really important is to understand that we're talking about Arya Satya. So how is this related to Arya Satya? Satya, that is, or truth. How is this a noble truth? It's a noble truth because for as long as we are in samsara, for as long as we are attached to whatever it is that we are attached to, we have not relieved ourselves from this pain and this suffering. We have not found a permanent cure for this problem. When we want something, we may go out and find it, we may work hard to get it, do all these things that we call abhisankara, formations to develop something, formations to build something so that we can achieve it. We may do all of these things to gain what we want, but as long as we are attached to it, and because things are anicca, things are not to our liking, they are simply a result of whatever the causes are. For as long as we are attached to that result, as soon as the causes change, the result changes, and therefore we are then bound to suffer. This is why the Lord Buddha says, for as long as you're in samsara, for as long as you're attached to whether it's kama, rupa or arupa, you are bound to suffer. This is why he talks about the noble truth, which is the Arya Satya. So that's the dukkha samudaya Arya Satya. Then he talks about dukkha nirodha Arya Satya. And he says the only way you can put an end to it, it's plain simple, right? If it's attachment that causes suffering, then what do you think is the answer to that problem? It's to remove attachment, to eradicate attachment, to get rid of it. Where from? Does attachment exist in the objects out there? Does it exist in the people out there? Does it exist in the car you drive, or in the house that you build, or the house you bought, the job that you enjoy doing? Does it exist in your children? Attachment? No, attachment is in your mind. That's where attachment arises. And that's where attachment can be ceased, can be put a stop to. So he says, now you found the cause for suffering, that is attachment, put a stop to it. When you put a stop to attachment, what you get is Nibbana. Nibbana or Nirvana. Nirvana being putting out, extinguishing. Extinguishing what? Attachment. In other words, raga, dvesha and moha. Raga being desire, lust, dvesha being aversion or hate, sometimes interpreted, and moha being delusion. So putting a stop to raga, dvesha, moha and tanha or attachment, and therefore Nibbana, not putting a stop to, but achieving Nibbana, which is a result of eradicating raga, dvesha, moha, is the emancipation of suffering. That's how to put a stop to suffering. But just saying, he doesn't stop at that. He says, so now you know what you need to do. This is how you should be doing it. And he talks about the Arya Ashtangika Marga, the Noble Eightfold Path. You see, it surprises me actually that I think this is probably one of the very few occasions where the English translation for Arya Ashtangika Marga is more accurate than actually the Sinhala translation. That really does surprise me. Because Arya Ashtangika Marga, again, Arya being how putting a stop to the journey or to the vehicle that's taken us on this journey. Ashtahangika, the eight things or the 8 components even. Marga is the path. This is the medium. And the English translation is clearly the Noble Eightfold Path. Noble because we are talking about something that is Arya, eightfold because there are 8 components, and path because it's the marga. That is the medium that you need to practice to put an end to this problem that is suffering, that is attachment. But the Sinhala translation is Madhum Pilivatha, or the middle path. Now I have seen some occasions where middle path is put forward as the translation to Aryashtangika Marga, but I think that's normally where someone translates it from Sinhala into English. But when someone tries to translate it from Pali into English, it is normally translated as the Noble Eightfold Path, because Madhum Pilivatha is basically the meaning behind that, and this is how I learned it at school even, at a young age, was, it's the middle path because you don't go to either extreme and you kind of practice the middle path. So you don't overly enjoy in lust, for example, but you don't completely remove yourself from it either. Now, that to me does not take one to Nibbana. So for example, if I would say I don't get angry, then the middle path should be, according to, that sort of translation, is I don't get angry all the time, but don't not get angry on some occasions. It's okay to be angry sometimes, but not all the time. To me, that just does not make sense. But, that's just my opinion. So, that's the Madhum Pilivatha is what Aryashtangika Marga is translated as in most places in Sinhala. But in English, it's the Noble Eightfold Path, which is a more accurate translation because we're talking about the 8 components, the eightfold path, the 8 steps that one needs to complete to achieve Nibbana. So, coming back to Anicca of the Sankara, and the reason I am coming back at this point is because I wanted to not only give you the meaning that's behind this verse, but also to help you link Anicca of the Sankara with the four Noble Truths. Because ultimately, as I say, if you want to be enlightened, if you want to realize Nibbana, if you want to be able to understand Nibbana in anything, and I mean absolutely anything, around you, in any kind of doctrine that you study, you have to be able to see, you have to be able to penetrate it and see the Four Noble Truths within it. Because if you don't see the Four Noble Truths in any kind of doctrine, in any kind of philosophy, then unfortunately you're not going to find Nibbana there. And in fact, the Lord Buddha says it himself. He says, if you can't see in any kind of Shasana, he says, there may be philosophers after my time, and if anyone preaches a Dhamma that does not contain the Four Noble Truths, then that will not help you attain Nibbana. So if whichever teacher, and I think this is important in today's day and age, because there are lots of teachers that teach that talk about Nirvana. There are meditation classes. There are lots of lectures and various classes that talk about Nirvana and how you can achieve it and what kind of practice you need to do. But always ask yourself, if you don't see the Four Noble Truths in whatever teaching, in whatever class, in whatever practice you do, then quite simply, you're not going to be able to attain Nibbana by following that practice. Now, that's not to say just because you can't see it, it's not there. What I'm saying is, if it isn't there at all, then you're not going to be able to achieve it. And in fact, if you can't see it, then you're not going to be able to achieve Nibbana. So if you can't see it for yourself, then it's important you go to the teacher and ask them, teacher, this philosophy you're teaching, you're telling me that this is going to help me attain Nibbana. For example, say you go to a meditation class, right? You're sitting in some kind of pose and your teacher is saying, this is the meditation that you now need to practice. You take instructions from the teacher and you start practicing it. I think the first thing you're going to have to understand is, now let me reflect on what I've just been taught and see whether I can see the Four Noble Truths in what I'm practicing now. And if you can't see the Four Noble Truths in what you're practicing, best thing you ought to do is stop right there, go and speak to your teacher and ask them the question. If what you want to do is attain Nibbana, if your objective is something else, perhaps if you want to achieve jhanas, and I'm talking about the anarya jhanas, the jhanas that are nothing to do with attaining Nibbana, then that's fine. That you may have another way. There may be some kind of way to do that. But if you want to attain arya jhanas, or you want to attain Nibbana, you have to be able to see the Four Noble Truths. Okay? So even in this verse that we're going to talk about now, which is Anicca, vatha, Sankara, you have to be able to see the Four Noble Truths if you want to use this to attain Nibbana. And if everything we're doing right now is an effort, a samma vayama to try and attain Nibbana, well, then let's do that. Isn't it great if you can look at an obituary notice and speak to the person next to you, or if you don't have anyone, just talk to yourself and be able to reflect on the fact that the entire Buddha's teaching is in this verse. I can see how there is the first noble truth, which is the dukkha arya satya. I can see the second noble truth, which is the dukkha samudaya arya satya. I can see the third noble truth, which is the dukkha nirodha arya satya. And I can see the fourth noble truth, the dukkha nirodha gamini patipada arya satya, in this verse. Wouldn't it be great if you could do that? Well, after today, if you are listening to this, then hopefully you should be able to do that. Right, so let's get into it. Anicca, vatha, Sankara. Uppadavaya dhammino, uppajjitva nirujjanti, pesang upasamosako. So let's take the first line. Anicca, vatha, Sankara. We've been discussing anicca I think for as long as we've been streaming these programs, and also we've been discussing when we had the sessions back in England. Anicca, vatha, Sankara. Anicca. Anicca, what is anicca? Everything is, every sankara. So anicca, vatha, Sankara, we are talking about sankara here. In fact, what this line is saying is it's describing an attribute of sankara. So sankara, the word sang, as we've said before, let's look at the etymology of the word sankara. Sang is avidya trushna. Sang is avidya and trushna, or delusion or ignorance even, and attachment. Kara is an action, it's a deed. So there are three types of sankara that the Lord Buddha talks about. In fact, we're talking about abhisankara here, because if it's based in ignorance and attachment, then we are talking about abhisankara. So we have kaya abhisankara, vachi abhisankara, and mano abhisankara. We also have punya abhisankara, apunya abhisankara, and anija abhisankara. All of these based, whichever way you look at it, based in avidya or ignorance, and tanha or attachment. So let's take an example, right? Kaya abhisankara. Anything that you do physically, so that could be, well, let me give you the explanation first. Anything that you do physically in the hope that you can develop some kind of existence, anything that leads to jati, anything that leads to bhava, that is existence, and jati, that is birth. And I'm not necessarily talking about your next birth. I'm not talking about rebirth here. Okay, we're talking about paticca in this moment. Paticca in this moment. I'm not necessarily talking about paticca in the next birth. I'm talking about this moment. Pravurti paticca sometimes referred to in Sinhala. Okay, so you have kaya sankara, vachi sankara, and mano sankara, or kaya abhisankara, vachi abhisankara, and mano abhisankara. So anything that you do, let's take an example here. What about, let's say, going to the gym? If you're going to the gym, and say you're going to the gym because you wanna get yourself a six-pack. Okay. Now, that is a kaya abhisankara. Why? Because you're trying to build something. Clearly, in this case, build your body, get your six-pack. So that is a kaya abhisankara. So to do that abhisankara, you're based in ignorance and attachment. You're clearly attached to not only how your body looks, you're attached to this view that having a good physical form, a good six-pack is a good thing. It's something that is of value. That is an idea that's based in ignorance, because I'm using the words you, but I'm not necessarily talking about you in this case. I'm just making reference to that, to the fact. Okay, so for someone that's doing that, they're doing it based in ignorance, because the understanding or their thinking is this is going to help them develop a physique that is going to bring them happiness, without actually seeing the fact that you're having to work hard for it. That is suffering. Once you've built it, so the six-pack, you now have to protect it, which again requires hard work. And then for every moment that you have to protect it, whether you like it or not, it's going to decay. This is why you have to keep doing whatever you're doing to continue to supply the causes that's going to give you that effect. Let me break that down into simple English. So if I'm at the gym and I want my six-pack, in fact, even before I go to the gym, right? I'm sat down in front of the TV. I'm watching this TV program, and I can see this guy. He's got a six-pack, and now I'm starting to think, oh, I wish I had a six-pack. Actually, what you're doing now is mano abhisankara. Why? Because mentally, you're now thinking of all the things that you should be doing, you ought to be doing to get yourself that six-pack. And all of these thoughts are based in ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of the fact that this six-pack, to even achieve this six-pack, I am going to have to suffer. That is abhisankara dukkha. From the moment you get your six-pack, if you have a six-pack, right? Some of you might do. Every time you sit down to eat, you're thinking, is this food going to affect me in a way that I don't like? Is this going to take away my six-pack? Is this, has this food got a lot of fat in it, for example? How much protein is there in it? How much carbohydrates are there in it? Is this good for me? You're always suffering now, because you're thinking, how am I going to, I need to maintain this. So that feeling of uncertainty is always there. It's always lingering in your mind. So dukkha, and then viparinama dukkha. Because, and I'm sure you might have heard, or you might have seen people who in the past have had, good physiques, good bodies. But when I say good, you know what I mean here. I'm talking in a very material sense here, because there isn't a good body at all. There is no such thing as a good body. Even the Buddha didn't praise his body. He speaks to Ananda one day and says, Ananda, look at me. This body is now like a cart, an old cart that has broken down. So there is no such thing as a good body. But I'm really talking in a very material sense here. This is what's going through this person's mind. To maintain that physique, that body, you're going to have to work hard, and you're going to have to sustain that effort. Because once you stop sustaining that effort, all of your hard work goes down the drain. You go away on holiday for a couple of weeks. This is why sometimes, even when people go on holiday, they book themselves a hotel that has a gym in it. Why? Because even while you're on holiday, you still got to go work out in the gym to maintain your body. Anything like that, anything that is caused by conditions, need to be maintained, need to be sustained. You have to continue supplying the causes to achieve that result. The moment you stop supplying the causes, the effect changes, the result goes away. What about good health? Do you think that's something that you can take for granted? Isn't good health something that you have to maintain, you have to sustain by eating all the right nutrients, making sure you take your medicines, getting enough sleep? All of these things you have to do to maintain good health. You stop doing any one of those things, and good health starts starts having an impact. Your behaviors start having an impact on good health. Because again, good health is a sankara, it's a sankata. Sankata is something that is conditioned. So coming back to what we were talking about, anicca vatha sankara, So that is a mano sankara. You're sitting in front of the TV, you're thinking, what do I now need to do to build my body? That is a mano sankara. Then you have vachi sankara. So vachi sankara is quite often it's mistaken that vachi sankara is in fact speech. It really isn't speech, although it's easy to think that it is speech. Quite often people think vachi sankara is when actually, in the example of building yourself a six-pack, people think that vachi sankara is when you go and talk to someone about it and tell them, hey, guess what? I want to get myself a six-pack. That's not vachi sankara. Vachi sankara is when, in fact, we've got to go by what the Lord Buddha has given us. We can't just make things up as we like it. We've got to go by what He's given us, and what He's given us is what's in the Tripitaka. So He says, vitakka vichara, vachi sankara. Vedana sanya mano sankara, vitakka vichara, vachi sankara. So what is vitakka vichara? We discussed this in the last session, and the last deshana. Vitakka vichara is to fix your mind, is to fixate your mind. When your mind is fixated on a certain thought object, on a certain idea, on a certain concept, and vichara is when you keep, when you're taking it apart, you're trying to, you continue your thought process along that thought object. So, basically you're doing your research, your mental research, you're building your thoughts along that line of thinking. That is vachi sankara. Okay? So now you're doing vachi sankara. Essentially you've seen this ad on the television, someone's working out, they're advertising, the advert is about this new exercise regime, for example, or perhaps it's a new diet, or perhaps it's a new gym in town. And they've got this advert on TV, you've seen it, you've now recognized it, that is your mano sankara. Now you're doing your vachi sankara, you're thinking along that thought process, and you're thinking, when can I go to this place? Do I take a friend with me? I wonder how much it is. Do I have the money to buy this diet? Do I have the pass to get there? All of these things you're starting to now do is all mano sankara, vachi sankara. And then finally the kaya sankara. Kaya sankara being your actions. So your actions, the actual actions you need to do by either talking to somebody, because talking itself is an action. You've got to use your lungs, and you've got to use your diaphragm to control the movement of air so that your words come out in a certain way. Your mouth, your teeth, and your tongue. So all of that is controlling your body to get a certain result, and that is all kaya sankara. And then you're actually walking up to the gym. That is all kaya sankara. Maybe calling a friend and talking to them, asking them to come with you, or maybe going and checking your bank account to see if you've got enough funds to pay for that diet. All of these things. It's all vachi sankara. Kaya sankara. So you do mano abhisankara, vachi abhisankara, and kaya abhisankara. What the Lord Buddha says is all of that is anicca. Anicca because why? That none of that is to your liking. As long as you have the conditions aligned in the right way, you get the result. So whatever it is that you have developed, so in fact even working out in the gym, that's all kaya sankara. And if your mind is now set on this six-pack, that is what you've set your goal as, what you got to understand is that is not to my liking. My liking has got nothing to do with whether I get my six-pack or not. If I want that result, I need to put in the effort. I need to put in all the right causes to get me that result. So for example, it might be I need to hit the gym every day for the next 6 months for 2 hours. If all of that are the causes that's going to give you that result, then you've got to do that. And if it means that you have to cut down on all your fats, you're not allowed any carbohydrates, and you have to take a protein-rich diet, then again, that's another cause. If it means you've got to, perhaps, you like going out with friends and, maybe taking a drink once in a while. And by the way, I'm not advocating that. Let me be perfectly clear. But, this is how people live their lives, right? So I'm talking to normal people. And hopefully, you've got to take this in the right context. then if you engage in taking intoxicants, then you've got to stop that, because if you continue that, you're not going to get yourself a six-pack. Now, I'm no expert on how you can get a six-pack, but these things in fact, what I'm doing now is doing Mano Sankara, Vachi Sankara, and Kaya Sankara to develop this thought about, or this idea and this concept, so I can give it to you in a way that you can understand and you can relate to. You've got to do all of these things to get that result, which is your six-pack. But you've got to understand the six-pack itself is a Sankara. It's the result of a multitude of causes that have come together in the right way at the right time. If either of those things change, if they don't come together in the right way, if you don't have all the right causes come together, and if they don't come together at the right time, then you don't get the result. This is why in the sutra it says anicca vatha sankara. Remember and realize the fact that all sankara, all sankara is anicca. Anicca vatha. Vatha being, that is the way it is. So vatha being, it's the way that you practice something. So there is, for example, in the time of the Buddha, there were people that used to practice it comes from the word ruta. So ruta being, in fact, a ruta is a circle. So a ruta being a circle, what is the significance of the concept of a circle here? So a circle is limited by, so the circle has a perimeter. So once you cross that perimeter, you're no longer in the circle. So for as long as you're in that perimeter, you're in the circle, right? So for any phenomenon that is bound by this perimeter, as long as you practice the rituals that give you that result, you're in that perimeter. This is why the Lord Buddha, in this verse, all sankara are bound by the perimeter that is anicca. It simply means all sankara are anicca, are subject to the condition that is anicca. So then he goes on to say, so this is the sakra, this is the sakra that's giving this discourse, uppadavaya dhammino. So he talks about uppadavaya dhammino. So what is this? Why is sankara anicca? So he's talking about, remember we said we need to relate this back to the Four Noble Truths. So he's now talking about uppadavaya dhammino, which means, so anicca vatha sankara, all sankara are anicca because it's subject to uppadavaya dhamma, meaning udayavya. So you might have come across potentially the Venerable Sariputta's discourse about udayavya jnana. This is the doctrine that talks about how all sankara are formed. All sankara being rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana. All sankata, all things that are conditioned. How are they formed? What are the conditions? So rupa being form, vedana being feeling, sanya being perception, sankara being formation, and vijnana being thoughts, consciousness even. So all of these things are subject to udayavya jnana. Are subject to udayavya, meaning they arise for as long as the causes that condition them are in existence, and vaya. Vaya meaning they will decay and decease when those causes decay and come to a stop. Let's take an example. Let's take a human being. A human being, having been born as a young baby, will continue to grow for as long as there are causes that give rise to that result. For as long as their bones grow, their muscles grow, their food is digested and adds weight and muscle to their body, their body keeps growing. Their brains, their minds, they develop mentally and mentally and physically. A baby develops until they come to a certain point in life. And at that point, and usually that's about 20, 25, that sort of age, then, because at that, you see, in the first few years, that first 20 years of someone's life, there are more causes coming together that help that person develop physically and mentally than the causes that than the causes that lead to decay and death. So there is more of the developing and less of decaying, and therefore the end result, what you perceive, is this child, is this baby growing up to be a young man or a young girl. And then you hit a certain age, 20, and then 20 onwards till about, or perhaps sometimes it's in your teenagers, maybe age of 18 to around middle age, say 30, 35, that sort of age. So at this time you now have the Uppada Dhammas, the Dhammas that support growth, and the Vaya Dhammas, the Dhammas that support decay and death, working in equal amount. So when amount in equals amount out, you see a net effect of 0. So initially you had a net effect of more in, less out, and therefore you see it filling up. Imagine you're filling water into a tank. There's an inlet and there's an outlet. If you're pumping in more water and you're removing less water than you're pumping in, then the effect is that this tank starts filling up. But at one point, if you decide, okay, now I open the inlet and the outlets to equal amounts, you have now an equal amount of water going in to the amount of water going out. So what happens then? The water level remains static. It doesn't change because amount in equals amount out. And then after a certain point, let's say you either open the outlet even more, or perhaps you close the inlet. What happens at that point? Then now you have more going out and less coming in. Then the water level starts dropping until you have all the water coming in, going out at the same time. Now, this is seeing Buddha Dhamma in everyday objects. Right? Now let's take this back to the previous example of a child growing up to being a middle-aged person and then going to death and decay. So at the beginning of someone's life, because remember, we're talking about opportunity notice. See how well this matches with the context that we're talking about? Anicca vatha Sankara. Remember, this person's life, this person's existence was all a Sankata. All of this, their entire lifetime was Mano Abhisankara, Vachi Abhisankara and Kaya Abhisankara. Okay? And now remember, how did this person come to be the person that they are now? The person that's in the coffin. Imagine you're at the funeral, this person's body is in the coffin and it's laid out in front of you. What should you be seeing? Well, let's look at how what was the Uppada? The Uppada was, this person came into being. When they came into being, and this included the time when this person was just a fetus in the mother's womb. There's more going in and less coming out. More what? More dhammas, more causes, more rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana being formed than the rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana being decayed and going to death. Now at some point, this continues till, like I said, late teenage to about early 20s. At that point, you now have the amount going in starts reducing, and it matches the amount that's going out. So now you have an equal supply in and supply out. So now you don't see a net change in this person's physical form. So once you hit the ages of 20, 25, you stop growing at that point. And this is the reason for that. Until you then start going into, you pass your middle age, you get to 35, 40, around that age, and guess what happens now? There's more going out, less going in. So what happens? Physically, your body starts decaying, sometimes even mentally, and there are ways you can control what happens to you mentally. I mean, Remember the Lord Buddha, from the moment he became a Buddha to the moment he entered Parinibbana, his mental state did not change one bit. And you can do that yourself if you attain Margapala. If you attain at least the state of Sotapanna, the Buddha gives a promise. You will not lose your mental sanity. There is no way that someone that has attained Sotapanna can then become insane. So actually, if everyone in the world were a Sotapanna at least, they would have to shut down all the mental hospitals. That is simply the truth. So actually, what we should be doing is helping people before they get a mental ailment attain Sotapanna. Because if that were the case, if the government invested, sorry, I'm going to politics now. This is not a rant, by the way. If the government invested more money or whatever resources in helping people get this Dhamma, listen to this Dhamma and attain Margapala and become Sotapanna, then actually they would need not invest that much in treating mental illnesses, mental ailments. Because once you're a Sotapanna, there is no way that you can be mentally, you can get a mental disease. Anyway, let's come back to what we were talking about. So physically, there's more going out and less coming in, and therefore physically you're starting to now decay. And you keep decaying until the point your in stops entirely, and now there's only going out, and your body is now completely decaying and comes to a point where you cease to exist, which is the point we call death. So quite relevant that goes into an obituary notice. So that's uppadavaya dhammina. Now, uppajjitva nirujjanti. What does that mean? So if that is the case, if all Sankara are anicca, and the reason that they are anicca is because they are subject to uppadavaya dhamma, meaning for as long as the causes are supplied for that object to, whether that's a person or some kind of incident, it is applicable to anything that is a sankata. Remember, a sankata being something that is conditioned, right? So uppadavaya dhammina. So anything that is a sankara is subject to this attribute that is anicca. Anicca being it's not to my liking. And if you then ask the question, well, if it's not to my liking, what is it that determines the way that it is? Then you have the answer uppadavaya dhammino. As long as the causes that give rise to it are supplied, it is in existence, it continues to prevail. And then vaya dhamma, so that's uppada dhamma and vaya dhamma. So vaya dhamma being, when the causes cease to exist, then that object or that incident ceases to exist as well. Uppajjitva nirujjanti. So how do we, if that is the case for all sankara, what is the long-term solution for this problem? Because if you don't find a long-term solution, you're always going to have to continue to provide the causes that give you that effect. Because remember what I said at the beginning, or a little while ago. If you want to remain good-looking, if you want to maintain your six-pack, if you want to maintain your physique, whatever it may be, right? Good health, remember? A relationship. I think last week we talked about relationships, husband-wife relationships. All of these things are conditioned. For as long as you provide the conditions, the result will remain. But as soon as the conditions change or the causes change, the result is going to change along with that. So do you continue to, do you spend a lifetime, an eternity, and all of samsara even, to maintain the things that you think bring you happiness? Such as your six-pack, good health, relationship, your job, your house, your body, all of these things. Do your relationships, right? Do you continue to work hard? And again, these things don't, they're not. You shouldn't be taking these things for granted. You have to work hard on these things, all of these things, whether that's by going, doing a job, earning money. Feeding, drinking, that's either yourself or the person that you want to maintain that relationship. You need to invest in them. That's why people say you need to invest in a relationship. You need to invest in your job. You need to invest to become successful. Basically, successful, or the literal translation for success, or perhaps not the literal translation, but the real translation for success should really be something that is maintained for as long as the causes that are supplied are sustained. Something that is maintained for as long as the causes that provide that are sustained. Now that is my definition for success. Whatever that success might be, whether that's a relationship, as I said, it could be a job, it could be your material possessions, it could be how rich or poor you are. Well, clearly people try to be more rich than they try to be poor. Health, relationships, all these things, right? So do you continue to work hard on providing these causes and then try to seek happiness from those things? Or do you do what the Buddha said, which is realize that whatever it is that you're attached to brings you nothing but suffering? Because at the moment you attach yourself to it, you're now concerned about it. Think about your children. Think about your material possessions, your car, your house, your health, whatever it is, right? Your job. The moment you attach yourself to it, now you're concerned about it. You're concerned and you now have to do things to sustain it. You have to do things to maintain it. Okay? So that requires effort. But no matter what you do, ultimately that's going to come to an end. Either because you cease to provide the causes, or there are causes that are outside of your control that come into play. What about, the death of someone you like, perhaps your parent. No matter how much you love them, how much you feed them, how much you take care of them, there's going to be a day when they pass away. You can't stop that. There is nothing that you can do to stop that. How much money do you think you can earn to stop your parents from dying? What is that amount? What is that amount of money that you can earn? At which point you can say, I have earned the amount of money which now means my parents don't die. How much food can you feed them? At which point you can say, I have fed them enough, so much that they're now not going to die. How much medication can you give them? The answer is obvious. This is the thing. So regardless of how much effort you put in, there's going to be a day where you can't continue that. Either because you can't continue providing the courses, or because there are other factors that come into play that you have virtually no control of. And then therefore you're just, you have to surrender to that. So do you continue to engage in this process of trying to maintain it, which is entirely useless? Because in the long run, you've got nothing left. It's only the effort you've invested in it, the hard work you put in, the money you've spent on it, the time you've spent on it. And remember, time is, even in Buddhism, one of the most important assets that you have. Why? Because remember, you are born a human. Time is very precious as a human being. Our lifespan is about 60 years, 70 years, at most 80. But after the time you've passed 70, you're virtually useless. I'm talking about myself, right? Sorry if you're over that age and you're listening to this. This is not a personal attack by any stretch of imagination. This is a personal reflection on myself. I know once I'm past that age, I'm virtually useless. I have a lot of respect for people who, even after that age, engage in a virtuous life, and they try to they try to put in every moment that they're awake to develop this path and cultivate their minds, and that gets my utmost respect. But I think myself, by the time I hit that age, I'm going to be of no use to anybody, let alone myself. So for how long can I maintain that? Regardless of that, there's going to be a time when that's all going to go away. So this is why this phrase upajitva nirujjanti is very important. So do I continue to maintain these sankatas, or do I find what is it that gave rise, that gave reason? What is it that gives rise to these conditioned objects to come into being, and seize them once and for all? As in, stop them once and for all. Because I could stop it once or twice. Take hunger. Let's take a really simple example. Hunger, right? If I were to take hunger, I treat hunger on a daily basis. On a daily basis, I have to treat hunger. Why? Because, well, clearly every day I have to eat something to keep hunger away. Now that's not uppajjitva nirujjanti. That is anicca vatha sankara in action. That is uppadavaya dhammino in action. But that's not uppajjitva nirujjanti. Because with hunger, all I'm doing is actually providing a very temporary relief. By eating, I'm providing a temporary relief for that problem. But if for it to be subject to that example to be representative of uppajjitva nirujjanti, I need to find the causes for that, long term, and then put a stop to that. So long term, the reason that I'm hungry is because I have a stomach that is emptied every once in a while. So basically once a day. It's emptied because the food that's in the stomach, passes down the intestines and, it's excreted. So it becomes empty, and then now I need to go fill it again. But the reason I have to do this is because I have a stomach. The reason I have a stomach is because I'm a human being. I have been born as a human being. Or an animal, right? I don't mean an animal in the animal realm, but, an animal in the sense that, humans being treated as an animal in the biological sense. So, as long as I'm born a human being, I have a stomach. So then if I have to cure that problem, I have to find why am I born a human being. Now I'm going into the realms of uppajjitva nirujjanti. How come? Well, I'm trying to find the root cause for this problem that is hunger. The root cause for this problem that is hunger is that I'm born a human. I have a stomach that gets emptied every day. That is why I'm hungry. But the reason my stomach is emptied every day is because I have a stomach in the first place. The reason I have a stomach is because I'm a human being in the first place. The reason I'm a human being is because I have attachment and ignorance that makes me think that being born human is such a good thing, and therefore I continue to provide Sankara, I continue to engage in Sankara that gives rise to this existence that is of a human being. But what if I stop doing that? What if I understood the true reality of this problem? What if I understood that, this is a really useless thing to do? For as long as I'm born a human being, I have to treat this problem that is hunger. Let me find the cause for my birth and then put an end to it. Isn't that what the Lord Buddha taught us? Isn't that what we are trying to do on a daily basis to try and achieve Nibbana? Find the cause for birth and then put a stop to that. Now that is true uppajjitva, as in find the causes for something to take place, and then nirujjanti. Nirujjanti meaning if you stop continuing to provide those causes, the effect will stop without you having to do anything else in addition to that. I was going to say the word automatically, but it's not automatically because there's a reason behind it. If you stop providing the causes, let's take a plant. Again, simple example. For as long as you keep feeding the plant with water, with fertilizer, and with sunlight, it's going to keep growing. But what if you stop that? It's going to die. So for as long as you continue providing the causes, you're going to get the effect. And as soon as you stop providing the causes, the result goes away. Now that is uppajjitva nirujjanti. And then the last line, te sang vupa samo sukho. Again we see the word sang. In the first line we saw anicca vatha sankara. Now we are seeing te sang. What is te sang? Te, the word te here means three. So we're talking about three things that are related to sang. Sang meaning attachment and ignorance. What are the three things? We've discussed this many times before. Remember, raga, dvesha, moha? Desire, aversion, and ignorance. So, vupa samo. Vupa sama. Vupa samo. So, vupa samo is to eradicate. Vupa samo. To eradicate from the roots. To remove from the roots, not just temporarily, but permanently, for good. So if you remove the roots for good, or removed it at the roots, removed it entirely, what things are we talking about here? Tesam, raga, dvesha, moha. The three things that are based in sang being attachment and ignorance. So if you remove those three things, raga, dvesha, moha, desire, aversion, and delusion, sukho. What is sukha? Sukha is happiness, bliss. And when we talk about Nibbana, well, in the context of the Lord Buddha's message, what is sukha? Supreme bliss is Nibbana. So tesam vupasamo sukho. If you eradicate the three things that are desire, aversion, and ignorance, then the result you get is the sukha or Nibbana. So going back to the beginning, anicca, vatha, sankara, all things, all kinds of sankara, all kinds of formation, whether that's kaya sankara, vachi sankara, or mana sankara, an attribute of that is anicca. They are not to my liking. It's not, they're not the way they are because I want it to be the way they are. Then the question is, well, why are they the way they are? So we ask the question, uppadavai dhammino. For as long as the uppada dhammas are provided, the causes are provided, they appear to exist. And as soon as they stop being provided, vaya dhamma, they start to decay. Then the question comes, well, how do we treat this problem? Uppajjitva nirujjanti. For as long as you provide these causes, they're going to maintain their state. But if you stop providing those causes, then they're going to cease to exist. And then the question is, well, how do we do that? Tesang vupasamosukho. Remove the three things from their roots, and the result of that is Nibbana. Now, let's tie this back to the Four Noble Truths. The first Noble Truth talks about suffering. Suffering in the sense of suffering in samsara. Anicca, vatha, sankara. Doesn't this explain why sankara is the problem? Why sankara brings us nothing but suffering? All kinds of sankara, vachi sankara, mano sankara, and kaya sankara, and the sankata which is a result of these sankara, all conditioned things are anicca. And if something is anicca, and we attach ourselves to it, then that brings us suffering. So this line gives us the first noble truth, anicca vatha sankara, dukkha satya. So dukkha satya is embedded in this phrase, anicca vatha sankara. Why again? Because all sankara leads to sankata, and all sankata, if sankara are anicca, then clearly all sankata which is a result of sankara is also anicca. And it's because things are anicca that we suffer as a result of attaching ourselves to these things. Then uppadavai dhammino. So what is the cause for this suffering? That is the second noble truth. What is the cause of suffering? Uppadavai dhammino. All of these sankara and the results of sankara that are the sankatas are subject to uppadavai dhamma. When the causes are supplied in the sufficient amounts, at the sufficient rate, at the right time, then they result in them coming to being, uppada. They are given rise to. And then vaya dhamma. When the causes are ceased, then you start to see decay and death. So then the third noble truth, dukkha nirodha satya. So how do we put a stop to this problem? Uppajjitva nirujjanti. If you stopped providing the causes if you stopped providing the causes that gives rise to conditioned things, once and forever, for good, then they cease to exist permanently. And again, remember, we are talking about, this is right even in the material sense. So this applies not only to Nibbana but also to material things. But we need to extract the deeper meaning here. I mean, that's what all of these sessions are all about. We don't touch the Dhamma, the Lord Buddha's Dhamma on the surface. We don't scratch the surface. We've done plenty of that, coming along samsara. Now is the time to get down to it. Get our hands dirty. Get into the roots of it and actually find out the deeper meaning so that we can cross this ocean of samsara, right? That's what we started to do. So, uppajjitva nirujjanti. What is this talking about? Nirvana. It's talking about Nibbana. Because Nibbana is all about find the causes that keep you tied to this samsara and then put a stop to that. So if you eradicate the causes that keep bringing you back into samsara and you put a stop to that, the result is Nibbana. Uppajjitva nirujjanti. And then finally, the fourth noble truth. What is the path to that? The Arya Ashtangika Marga is embedded in Tesang Upasamo Sukho. Tesang, remember, if you do these things, if you do this alone, which is the three sang. What are the three sang? As in the three things that are based in attachment and delusion: raga, dvesha, moha, desire, aversion, and delusion. If you treat these three problems, so this is the path to do what? Uppajjitva nirujjanti. Why? Because uppadavaya dhammino. So you can achieve what? A treatment or a solution to the problem that is anicca vatha sankara. So if you eradicate raga, dvesha, moha, desire, aversion and delusion, the end result is sukha. But what kind of sukha are we talking about here? Again, this applies just as well in the material sense. The reason that we suffer day to day in day-to-day occurrences is because of our raga, dvesha, moha, desire, aversion and delusion. So if we eradicate desire, aversion and delusion, both in a material sense and in the supra-mundane sense, or in the nibbanic sense, then the result is one that is worth having, and that is the sukha or the nibbana. So hopefully what you've been able to see there is how in this verse that the Sakka or Sakradevya uttered just after the parinibbana of the Samma Sambuddha, what he's actually doing is encompassing the message of the Lord Buddha, the message that he gave us over his 45 years of life. I mean, quite frankly, I think this is in today's terms, this is an eulogy. Again, for our young listeners, an eulogy is basically where at a funeral, someone gives a speech and they talk about, this is what this person was able to achieve in their time. Here are all the great things that they've done, and here's how good a friend or family they've been to other people. In the Buddha, again, let's go back to the beginning. What did we say at the beginning? Yo dhammam passati, so mang passati. So now the Buddha has attained parinibbana. If you want to see the Buddha, you have to see his Dhamma. And what was his Dhamma? His Dhamma was what he uttered in the Dhammacakka Pavattana Sutra. And what was that? The Four Noble Truths. Dukkha Satya, Dukkha Nirodha, Dukkha Samudaya Satya, Dukkha Nirodha Satya, Dukkha Nirodha Gamini Patipadari Satya. So is this not clearly an eulogy by the Sakradevya? When he says Anicca vatha Sankara, the first noble truth is contained within that. Uppadavaya dhammino, the second noble truth is contained within that. Uppajjitva nirujjanti, the third noble truth is contained within that line. And tesang upasamo sukho, the fourth noble truth is contained within that. So this verse was taken from the Maha Parinibbana Sutta. And what I'm hoping that you'll be able to do now is that when you go to a funeral, or perhaps you see an obituary and you see the words Anicca vatha Sankara, you'll be able to reflect on that. You'll be able to reflect not only on just the Dhamma, but remember, There's no point in just taking Dhamma, because then you're just learning. This is just knowledge. Knowledge without applying it is absolutely useless. Remember, I've said before, people say knowledge is power. I said that's not true. That's not true. Knowledge applied is power. If you don't apply knowledge, but if knowledge was power, then I've got a library that has the 57 books of the Tripitaka. All of that is knowledge. How is that power? You might have the Encyclopedia Britannica in your library. That's knowledge. How is that power? But if you apply it, if you apply what you've learned today into your lives, so if you're looking at an obituary notice, you're at someone's funeral and you see this on a banner that says Annica with the Sankara, and you're thinking, oh, look at this person's life, look at what's happened to them. Right? You could be thinking this person's mind and body, and both was just a Sankara, was a result of Sankara, it was a Sankata. Now see how that has become anicca. It was not to his liking, it was not to my liking, it was not to anybody that loved this person, it was not to their liking. Because if it were to their liking, this person would still be alive. But now they're dead. They're no more. Why? Because they're anicca. It's not to anybody's liking. So why was that? Because they are subject to uppadavaya dhamma. For as long as the reasons that give rise to their existence continue to be, they will be alive. And when the causes cease, come to an end, stop, then their life comes to a stop as well. So they're subject to uppadavaya dhamma. Uppajjitva nirujjanti. They're going to keep doing this time and time and time again in samsara, unless they realize this dhamma, that is uppajjitva nirujjanti. If I find the reasons for this, for my rebirth, decay and death, and put a stop to that, then I've sorted my problem. I've solved my problem. So how do I do that? Well, Nibbana is the only way to do that. What are the steps that will get me there? Te sangupasamosako. Raga, dvesha, moha is what keeps me in samsara. So, you look at a person that's dead. Think about yourself, because before long, you're going to be in that coffin. Remember, this is a fate that we're all going to be subject to. Both you and I will one day be where that person is today. You and I will both be in a coffin one day. That's just a matter of time. You might think that's a very long way from now. Can you guarantee that it's not going to be at the end of this sermon? Can you guarantee that it's not going to be in the next 5 minutes? We all build plans, we build all our hopes for 10, 20, 15, 30 years in the future. What guarantee do we have they're going to be around for that long? Doesn't death come to young people? Sometimes you have stillborns. Children who are born, they come out of the womb dead. That's a stillbirth. So even before they're born, even before they come out of the mother's womb into this world, they're dead already. This is the reality of the world we live in. This is the reality of what we've built for ourselves. This is why it's all anicca. Everything, our life, this body, this mind, it's all sankara. It's a result of all sankara. And therefore it is subject to anicca. That's the reality. Why? Because it's subject to the Dhamma, to the doctrine that is uppadavaya. The only way you can put an end to this is by attaining Nibbana. And Nibbana is nothing but uppajjitva nirujjanti. Find the causes, put a stop to the causes, the result stops. Full stop. No more. You find the causes for rebirth, put a stop to those causes, and then birth is no more. Then you ask the question, well, what are the causes for rebirth? Te san rupa sammo. Te san, the three, san. The three things that are based in avidya and tanha, the three things that are based in attachment and ignorance. What are the three? Again, raga, which is delusion, which is desire, dvesha, which is aversion, and moha, which is ignorance or delusion, based in attachment and ignorance. So if you eradicate those, then you attain Nibbana, or supreme bliss. That is Nibbana. So I hope that is clear and you've been able to gain that understanding from today's discussion. So I really wanted to, because I've been reflecting on this in the past week. Perhaps, I might have seen it somewhere, perhaps a banner, when I was traveling somewhere. And then I started thinking about, what, there must be a deeper meaning to this, and then started to contemplate on that. And as I say, if you don't see the Four Noble Truths in any kind of teaching, no matter who your teacher is, right? It could be the Dalai Lama. It could be someone that claims to be a Buddha. It could be an Arahat, or someone who claims to be an Arahatan Mahansi. It could be someone who claims to be Sotapanna. It could be a Prutarjana. It really doesn't matter. It could be something you read in a book, a magazine. If you can't see the Four Noble Truths, the philosophy of the Four Noble Truths in that Dhamma, by contemplating on that Dhamma, then unfortunately you are not going to be able to attain Nibbana simply by understanding that. You have to be able to see the Four Noble Truths. And if you can't, then go seek a noble friend, a Kalyana Mitra, and get them to help you. Perhaps that's your teacher. Get them to help you. Ask them to help you unwrap what you're learning and find the Four Noble Truths within what you're learning. If you can do that, then you've got yourself a karmasthana. I mean, this anicca vatha sankara is a karmasthana. What is a karmasthana? A karmasthana is something that you can reflect on, something that's going to help you, something you can meditate on. I mean, can you not, now that you understand the meaning that helps you attain Nibbana, within anicca vatha sankara, can you not use this as a meditation object? I mean, if your style of meditation is to sit down somewhere, perhaps in the morning, evening, or afternoon, it really doesn't matter, to sit with your legs wrapped and in the lotus posture maybe, and then reflect on anicca vatha sankara, can you not use this as your meditation object? Thinking about what anicca vatha sankara means, how that relates to the First Noble Truth, how upadavaya dhammino, this is the cause for suffering, this is how you put an end to suffering, and these are the steps to do that. Once you understand this, you then start reflecting on your mind, your mentality. You start thinking, why am I still in samsara? Am I not subject to anicca? Am I not subject to upadavaya dhamma? If that is the case, then forever I'm going to keep suffering. Forever I'm going to be subject to decay and death. And that is painful. There's no doubt about that. That's entirely painful. This is in the human realm. Think about in the apayas, in the woeful plains. Let's not go there. We've been there plenty times. Let's not go there again. So engage yourselves in upajitva nirujjanti, and to do that, always look for raga, dvesha, moha within your minds, and keep targeting that, keep eradicating that, and you will attain the supreme bliss that you so wish for, that you so want to achieve. So hopefully today's sermon has been useful, and if you found this useful, then please share this with your friends and family. Perhaps there are friends you have who might like to listen to this. There could be friends for whom Sinhala is not their first language. If they are native Sinhala speakers, then by all means we have the Sinhala Deshana on the same YouTube channel. But if they're non-native speakers, non-native Sinhala speakers, then be kind enough to point them to these videos, these recorded sessions, so that they may benefit just as much as you do. But the most important thing is your Nibbana. Remember that. Never forget that. Because the most important thing for me is my Nibbana. Nothing else. The reason I do these sessions is because when I talk, when I go and research, when I do my study, I'm learning something that helps me reflect on the reality of my life. Why am I still in samsara? What do I need to do next to eradicate raga, dvesha, moha? That should be your objective as well. Because if you don't do that, then you're just wasting human life, valuable human life, wasting it every moment of every day. Be mindful that what you've gained, what you've been able to achieve, this human birth, is so precious. I've told this to you time and time before. It is so precious. Don't conduct yourself in a way that one day when you pass away, you've gained nothing more than your pet dog at home or the stray dog that's on the road. Please don't do that. Please don't conduct your lives in such a way that you ultimately on the day, when you're on your deathbed, you contemplate, you reflect on all the things you've done in your life and you ask yourself the question, what have I done for myself? And if you're going to struggle at that point to answer that question, unfortunately it's going to be too late for you. No one's going to be able to save you at that point. So let's do that now. Let's make use of this gift that we have received. This precious gift that we have been so fortunate to receive. That is the Buddha Dhamma, the Lord Buddha's teaching. Let's use it to cross this ocean that is Sankara and put an end to this endless rebirth cycle, which brings us nothing but pain and suffering time and again. Because enough is enough. I hope the merits that you have all gained by listening to this Dhamma, to this sermon today, may help you, may help your relatives, your friends, all the Devas, the Brahmas and your past relatives you might have invited to listen to this Dhamma at the beginning of this program. I hope that the merits you've all attained, you've all achieved, you've all accumulated, help you all cross this ocean, this painful experience, this painful rebirth cycle, put an end to this rebirth cycle and put a stop to samsara. May you all attain Nibbana in this birth itself. Peruvan Sarnai.